Hello guys, it's Ori Chikochi again guys, and welcome to another video again of Ori Talks Football. Again guys, like, subscribe and leave a comment on the video, and I'm back again with you. And yeah guys, I hope you've had a great day. And yeah guys, I'm gonna be continuing talking about Manchester United, my continuation of the video that I released against Hull on Saturday. And it's just me guys talking about, today I'm gonna be talking about what is one of the biggest weaknesses that I've seen that United have carried over for years, and it's still going to be an issue that United are going to have in the current season unless United sort this situation out. And you know, I see a lot of people, I see a lot of our fans, I see a lot of colleagues, I see a lot of people talking about being comfortable, being confident in United, and I'm also comfortable, confident. I want the team to do well. I want us to push up. We were third last season, but I want us to push the second and third and the first place, which is Arsenal and Man City, closer. But there is this fundamental issue that if we do not improve on and get better, it's going to be one of the issues that we're struggling with, and it's in attack, guys. Our inability to break down low blocks is going to be a huge issue that we're going to face this season. And I'm going to focus generally on the attack because I do think that we're relatively okay defensively. I will talk about defensively what I think improvements we can make, and also in midfield. I've spoken about midfield, what the makeup of the midfield is going to look like. But you know, I'm going to be talking about the attack because this for me has been one of the biggest frustrations I've had for the past for years. If I'm even honest, decades. For the past decade, ever since Sir Alex Ferguson retired from Man United and has developed under different managers, under the Mourinho era, under the Rangnick era, under the Louis van Gaal era, under the it got even more exposed in the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era. But it's something that is looking to be more of a problem. And especially when I looked at it after the game against Hull, I was like, you know what, I have to talk about this because I think as United fans, we can't be too naive to this issue that we have. And, you know, I've wrote down a few notes, I've gone through the data, I've looked at parts of the game that I think of it. And the first thing that I will say is that, guys, United, and I'll first take it from the last season, as soon as Carrick got into, we're going to use it as a reference. You know, Carrick, I think he played in 12 or 13 of the games last season, and he won a lot of those games. But you'd be surprised to know that in a lot of those games, United still struggled, especially away from home and playing against the bottom half teams in the league. That's my target area and my focus area, because I really do think that when we play the top 6 teams and we play the better teams in the league, United generally have a formula that works for them. We know that United's biggest strength when we play against teams that are better than us or higher league, we know the Liverpools, the Man Cities, the Arsenals, they're going to play with us, they're going to play high, they're going to press up high. And United, which is one of the biggest things that they will do, they'll play on the break, they'll play a counter-attacking. Rio Ferdinand was speaking it in one of his videos, speaking about the fact that Rio was speaking that we're a counter-attacking team, especially after the game that United were having against Hull. And it was our inability to penetrate and play against low blocks. And there's other thing that you need to also understand, that, guys, was that in a lot of those games that United won in the second half of last season, under Carrick specifically, United had less possession in a lot of those games that they won. Against Fulham, against Crystal Palace, even against Nottingham Forest, United had less possession. And especially in the away games, looking at the away games, because that's the reference of what I'm looking at, is in the away games, United are going to struggle a lot against teams that sit back, are physical against them, they sit back deep, are compressing space. They're going to be very blunt in attack because our characteristics of what we are trying to do and what we try to do as a football team is geared towards us playing on the counter. And we have to improve on that. We have to improve on that. And I've written down a few notes on that. The first of all is the fact that against bottom 5 teams last season, United, and Rio said it again, United played 8 games, they lost 6 and they drew 2. So they didn't even win against the bottom 5 teams in the league last season. They struggled, home and away. They either drew or they lost. And the reason why I'm saying is that when you're playing against bottom half teams, especially the bottom half towards the relegation side. First of all, you have to earn the right to play against them. You have to earn the right to play. And when I say you have to earn the right to play, I'm talking about you have to match those teams physically. You have to have the desire, the energy, and you have to match them in terms of intensity. If you noticed the game against Hull City, guys, those guys, they were fighting for everything. They were scrapping for everything. They were very physical. They were very hard. They made sure that they were sprinting. They closed down the space. The moment they lost the ball, they were sprinting very hard to get back into space. They were sprinting very hard to make sure that they got into their position. They made sure that there are spaces in between the midfield and the defense. Their lines were very narrow, and they made Manchester United play. And one of Giles, one of the players in the post-match reaction, he said that they made it one of the biggest things, that when they lost the ball, they made sure they were narrow, they made sure they were hard to play against, and they played in sort of like a low block. And that's the biggest thing, low block. United have a big weakness in that. And I'm going to be talking about one of the few things that I said that. The first thing is the lack of penetration. That's one of the biggest weaknesses that we show, is that we as United can dominate possession, guys, but they don't really play getting behind, especially when the team is defending in a mid to low block. United find it very difficult to play against those teams because the circulation of possession generally happens in front of the defense. But generally United, they don't play that quick ball. They don't penetrate out wide they don't penetrate very well. Their passing is very slow, and United needs to break the lines a lot more. They need to have more combinations. They need to have more 1-2s in and around the area. They need underlapping runs. Luke Shaw did them one or twice, and Rashford found him in the second half when they got behind the defense, even though in the narrow spaces. And you also need to make sure that, I spoke about the fact that Andre Santos can play that line breaking pass that plays behind the defense. You need to also have players that play on the half turn, quick, playing on the half turn to be able to turn on the half turn, play quick 1-2s and getting behind. But you need runners and you need coordination when you're doing that. And when you're playing in crowded areas, United struggle because they don't have the passing patterns. They don't have the capacity to be able to move the ball with speed and quickness and intensity. And it sort of makes it look like the players don't have an understanding of what they have to do when they have to play to have that incisiveness and that creativity and guile. You know, United know how to play when to play against space. One of the biggest chances that United created through the middle was when Matheus Cunha got the ball on the half turn, especially when Hull City just made a mistake and they lost the ball. Matheus Cunha played on the half turn and played Bryan Mbeumo into space, and that was one of their best chances that United had. But it was on the turnover ball and on the break and on the counter. And that's what United need to learn. Yes, that has to be one of your strengths, but you can't make it your sole identity, because Man City can play on the counter if they need to. Liverpool can play on the counter if they need to. Arsenal can play on the counter if they need to. Big teams generally have that capacity to be able to play with speed, but you can't make it something that is your identity to say that we are only going to be a team that knows how to play against we are constantly going to be a team that distinguishes ourselves on our ability to play on the break and on the counter. Because when you play against the bigger teams, which are going to probably play on 6 or 7, you're probably going to play a quarter of the games in the league against those bottom half teams. The top 6 teams, I mean, in terms of the Tottenham, the Arsenals, the Liverpool. You're going to only play 12 to 14 of those games where you're going to probably be able to have the ability to play on the break. But the other 24 to 26 games in the league, a lot of those teams are going to sit back, they're going to play on the low block, and you need to be able to penetrate the teams. And the lack of penetration through the middle is one of the biggest weaknesses that United had. And one of the reasons why is because United, when they play against those teams, the second part is their attacks become very predictable. You know, they generally have normal sequences where they'll play the ball from the center backs, they play into the midfielder, play to the full back, which is generally Dalot or Mazraoui or Shaw. They play out wide and then they put in cross. Manchester United had 34 crosses. And over 60 to 70% of those crosses that they had didn't even go through pass the first man of the defense of Hull. But they also didn't have any physical presence in the when they were putting those crosses. And there wasn't any focal point that they had. And because their attacks were very predictable, a lot of their players were coming to the ball. Mbeumo was coming to the ball. Tielemans was coming to the ball. Yes, Tielemans, generally you could see that Tielemans was vacating the middle and trying to play on the half space, on the right-hand side half space. But there wasn't any movement or any combinations that would make sure that Tielemans would make that rough into the half spaces. Or there were plays they would make a lot of movements that would isolate maybe Mbeumo with the fullback or with the wingback, or they make cutbacks or central combinations that would make sure that they would isolate and create a lot of issues for Wolves to think about. United were just generally playing in front of them. They would play one or two passes, but then they would play the ball wide. Bruno would vacate the central attacking zones. Mbeumo would vacate the central attacking zone. Cunha would vacate the central attacking, and a lot of what they were doing was in front of her. You need to stretch them, guys. You need to pass the ball with a little more pace. There has to be more speed in your passing. You have to make sure that you have runs. You create isolation situations on the fullback side. If you're putting in crosses, you can't let the defensive team set themselves. You need to play the ball quick and then you put the ball in so that the defense is looking towards their goal line, so that you can be also to make runs and your midfielders are coming towards the ball. You need to have runs in behind so that you can create cutbacks so that your midfielder come into and shoot those balls. You need to create those situations. But if you are playing in front of the defense and you're not creating a lot of variation in your attack, it makes it very difficult for teams to play against. And that was the issue. That's been the issue for United ever since, for the past few years. Whether they've had Anthony Martial, whether they've had the Juan Matas, they've had a lot of creative players. But if you're not building sequences, if you're not building any patterns of play, if you're not showing the opposition team a different picture and you're constantly showing them the same picture, the opposition gets comfortable, they understand what they are doing. And because of that, it's very easy to defend. It's very easy to plan against this. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses that United have. They need to be less predictable. They need to add more variation in terms of what they do. They need to create more through balls. They need to make switches of play. If your switches of play and you're playing at one pace, it makes it easy for the defensive team. You can't play with one pace from your defensive build-ups to your midfield build-ups to your attack. You need to change up the pace of your passing. You have to be more sharp in terms of your isolation and your creative zones, your passing patterns and your building up schemes, especially in the final third. You have to be more crisper. Bruno Fernandes can't constantly come to the ball every single time. You need to also make sure that he's playing in the half space or in between behind the opposition midfield line. And you need to make sure that when you do that, there are runners in behind. If Cunha is coming towards the ball, Mbeumo or Ahmad or Dogu is also running in behind. Make sure that when you make quick 1-2s, there are also runners making plays so that you can create isolated zones and you can create sequences that will give the opposition team an ability to play in the low block. And you also need to have profiles. They have a lot of creative players, but you can't all come to the ball. You need to make sure that you have runs in behind. You need to have coordinating passing patterns. You need to make cutbacks. You need to have combination play so that you can be able to open up those teams, because those are most of the teams that you're going to face. And that is a big weakness, guys. Yes, it's the first game of the season, but it's a weakness that they've had for a very long time. And I'm glad that more and more people are speaking about this. And I just feel like it's something that United need to really sort out, their attacks being predictable. And when you're becoming predictable, you then don't go to the third part, which is United are not creating high quality chances enough. They are not creating enough high quality chances. United had a big issue in terms of the fact that they had 1.3 xG from 21 shots. But 16 of the 21 shots that they created were worth less than 0.1%. And they were more through individual brilliance. And The reason is because, one, players are trying to do individual things. They are trying to take the ball individually and create situations. When Bruno becomes frustrated, which I'm not saying Bruno is a big problem, but one of his biggest weaknesses is the fact that when he gets frustrated and is not getting the ball, he starts to come and look for the ball. He wants to come look for the ball and is facing the attack. But you also need him making runs in behind. He has to be less predictable. You also need to have him in goal-scoring situations, instead of him being on the side where he's standing towards the ball, You need to also make sure that when Bruno is passing, he needs to also make sure that when he's passing, he's following up with an action of running, You can't be playing the ball once you are standing. You need to also make sure that when you're passing the ball, Bruno is passing the ball. He's passing the ball and he's making a run into the box. He's passing the ball through 1-2s or making underlapping run. When another player is coming, Bruno is making the run in that, so that you can be able to create high quality chances. Because yes, you can shoot, Bruno can shoot, Cunha can shoot, but you also need to create high quality chances. One of the biggest things that I liked about Man City, and that comes into the style of play, I really identified myself a lot with Man City, because Man City create a lot of high quality chances. And that is something that Arsenal are also starting to develop. They're not very good at it, because Arsenal still have a bit of issues in terms of their attack, but they're still developing their attack. I think that they will get better in this season. But one of the biggest things that made Man City for me, which I would reference from, was the amount of high quality chances that they were creating. And a lot of high quality chances they were creating was through a lot of movement around the box. There was a lot of good passing patterns. There was a lot of cutbacks. And a lot of the crosses, when they were putting in crosses, they were placing crosses intentionally through movement. And they were making the team, the defensive team, worry about what they were going to do, because they couldn't set against it. The Kevin De Bruyne's, the Bernardo Silva, the David Silvas, they were running into they were running into that pocket in between the right fullback and the right fullback of the defensive team and the central defender, and they were playing through those half spaces. They would play the ball out wide, and you'd see De Bruyne and David Silva making those right to the back line, and they were playing through cutbacks. And the Raheem Sterlings, the Leroy Sané's, the Agueros, and the De Bruyne and the Gundogans were creating a lot of high quality chances, and that's why they were creating a lot of goals. There isn't still any sequences that you can say this is a sequence, or this is an attacking sequence, or this is attacking philosophy or style of play. And I don't want to say, you have to have an attacking framework that you work towards, and there are certain repeatable sequences that you have to do that make players understand where to go and what to do, so that it makes it easier for you to be able to create high quality chances. And then within that framework where you are creating sequences, then the players can be able to be comfortable enough to make runs when they need to make runs. But you need to have sequences, you need to have attacking patterns of play, and you need to create high quality chances, because a Šeško is not going to score 20 to 30 goals if he's not getting a picture that he's seeing repeatedly. If Šeško doesn't know where the ball is going to come, when Šeško doesn't know which opportunity, if Šeško doesn't know that if I make a run in from, am I going to get a cross? Am I going to get a cutback? If I make a run into this area of the field, am I going to get runs there? A lot of the time, Šeško is getting a lot of opportunities from counter-attacking or breaks, and is having to play the ball. But if you notice it, Šeško is not getting a lot of opportunities where he's running into the ball into the 18 to 16 yard area from crosses or from cutbacks or from good passing movements that creates penalty box presence and penalty box opportunities. And that's the biggest thing. You need to make sure that you have good movement, you have sharp movement, you have good coordinated passing, and you are showing your striker a picture that he can be able to run towards. You need to create an opportunity. You need to create repeatable movements and repeatable patterns that make it easy for Šeško to be able to make those runs, so that he can be able to anticipate. That one of the biggest issues, and that is one of the biggest things, is when players are not getting, and especially your strikers and your attacking players, when they are not getting, and that was one of the weaknesses with Højlund. That's why I don't want to be too harsh also on Højlund and on the previous strikers. When you're not getting clear pictures in terms of knowing where to make those runs, especially in penalty box area, it becomes very difficult. for you to make runs because you don't know whether Ahmad or whether your winger is going to put in the ball, when the cross is going to come. If the cross is going to come, what movement should I make? So those are things that United need to work on. And I'm going to give you another statistical imprint that I figured out was United drew 1-1 against Leeds last year. United had 55% possession, but they had one shot inside the box and had six shots outside the box. And that's one of the things. The game they had against Burnley when they drew 2-2, they had a lot of possession, but they had two shots. They had 2 shots inside the box and had 7 shots outside the box. The same thing. And then look at this. The game they had against Man City and the game they had against Liverpool. United, the big chances that they created inside the box. They had 6 big chances. They had 6 big chances inside the box and 1 shot outside the box. The game against Liverpool, the game against Arsenal, where they won 3-2, they had 2 shots inside the box and 6 shots outside the box. Yes, most of the opportunities that they scored in the game against Arsenal, if you remember, a lot of their goals came from outside the box, from Doku and Cunha. But they created a lot of the opportunities. They had more opportunities inside the box when they were playing against those teams where they had space. But the game against Crystal Everton, where they drew 1-1, they had 2 shots. They had 1 big chance. They had 1 big chance, which was the goal that Šeško scored on the break. But they had 5 shots outside the box. They had 2 shots inside the box. They didn't create enough shots inside the box. The game they had against Newcastle, they had 3 big chances created, and that was on the basis of the fact that Newcastle had a red card, remember, guys. But they had 6 shots outside the box. They had 3 big chances. They remember the Dogu header, the ball that Mbeumo, the through pass that Bruno made, and they had 1 big chance. So the game against Newcastle, those are the chances they created. The game that they lost against Leeds, when they lost 2-1, United had less possession. Leeds had less possession, but they had 0 big chances. United had 0 big chances. They had 4 shots outside the box. They had 4 shots inside the box, but they didn't. Those chances are not high quality chances that I could say are chances that United are creating. The game against Brentford, which they drew, they won 2-1. Brentford had 55% possession. They had 4 shots inside the box. Brentford had 4 shots outside the box. Brentford. In the game against Liverpool, United had less possession. They had 3 shots inside the box. They had 4 shots inside the box, and they had 2 big chances created. But again, that game was a game that they could get in behind Liverpool. And what am I trying to say? Is that United need to create more high quality chances inside the box. Their XG in terms of their chance creation inside the box has to improve. And that has to come from good passing movement, good creativity. I remember the opportunity. And one other thing that United need to improve on, and that is something that I'm going to be talking about, is that United, which is the 4th part, is that United can't be too dependent on individual creativity. A lot of times, a lot of the things, I looked at the game they played against Hull, and I saw it at a lot of the game that they played in, especially against bottom of the half teams. You'll find that Bruno is coming towards the ball and is directing play from players to know where to run. Cunha is coming towards the ball, is making for a player to make a specific run. Ahmad is coming towards the ball, Mbeumo is coming to the ball and is directing a player to make a run, to make a little run. You can see that the players are not passing the ball with any conviction or any clarity in terms of knowing what they have to do with the ball. And that's why you find that Bruno a lot of times is creating the opportunities, because Bruno will come and take the ball deep, and will direct Mbeumo to make the run. Or you'll find them making hand gestures in terms of, and I'm not saying that is wrong, but there has to be less of that and more. When I play the ball into this area, I know that if I can make this run, there's this passing pattern. There's to be a framework that you work towards, especially against the bottom of teams where you're playing the ball, you're moving the ball. One of the things that Kevin Prince Boateng spoke about when he went to AC Milan was that in a lot of times when you asked for the ball, he would shout to the player, he would shout and say, I want the ball here, I want the ball here. And Paulo took him aside and said, stop shouting, I see you, make the run. Let's play more. Don't shout because you tell the opponent where to go. You tell the opponent where to find you. There has to be more movement, guys. There has to be more runs in behind. And the biggest thing I'll say is United need to be less predictable. They need to move the ball a lot better. Bruno needs to stop coming to the ball sometimes, and the players need to have more patterns of play. They need to, but that's something that they have to work towards. You know, that's something that they have to improve on and they have to work towards. You can't rely on every tag being on Bruno to create an exceptional pass or create a player to beat two defenders. There has to be repeatable automatisms in terms of their passing movements, in terms of the rehearsed movements. When I go here, he has to go here. And when you do that more and players get more understanding on what they have to do and where they have to go, it makes it much easier for you to be able to break down these low blocks, you know. And the reason why is because the attacking relationships also have to improve. The relationships between Mbeumo, Cunha, Bruno, Ahmad, Šeško, Rashford now being there has to be more attacking, more relationships. They have to instinctively know. There has to be more chemistry in terms of understanding how they're going to create opportunities, how they're going to create quality opportunities. That's when you'll be able to see Mbeumo getting 10 to 15 goals, Cunha getting 15 to 20 goals, Šeško getting to 20 to 30 goals, Rashford getting 10 to 15 goals. Because there has to be more attacking relationships, and you create more attacking relationships through working together in terms of knowing, understanding the patterns of play, understanding what we have to do. And I'm focusing on the final third because that's where United are going to get a lot of joy if they improve on that. You know, I always say that you get a lot of your job done. I don't worry about Manchester United playing against top 6 teams. I'll repeat this part. But a lot of the points that you're going to have this season is when you can play against the bottom half teams and you win home and away. But you need to work on it. You need to work on those movements. You need to work on those patterns. You need to have more chemistry from the midfield to attack. You need to have more runs. If Mbeumo is making a run in behind, it mustn't be a run just on an isolated movement. You need to build more patterns, you know, and more passing triggers and more. And when United did it in moments in the preseason, that's why I was like, I'm a bit more optimistic, especially when you could see that they were making the ball, they were passing the ball with more fluency and more fluidity. But they do need to do it a bit more. They need to make sure that they work on it as much as they can, so that you don't have to rely on your counter-attacking ability only. But you know, if Cunha is dropping deep into the half space, if Cunha is dropping, who's going to occupy the wide area? If Ahmad is staying out wide, is when Bruno is coming to take the ball in the half space, is Mazraoui or Dalot making a run in behind? Or are they coordinated passing? Is there coordinated automatisms that are happening that can help the team be able to break those things? So those are the relationships that I'm talking about. It feeds more to patterns of play and having good coordinated movements. You need to build those relationships and those coordinating passing patterns. That has to improve, and that has to come, guys. And that's why I say that, you know, United, that is one of the biggest tactical challenges, because more teams, when they play against United, they're going to sit back, they're going to be difficult, they're going to play hard to beat, they're going to be physical, they're going to make sure that they make Man United difficult, they're going to compress the space, and a lot of teams are going to play 5. They're going to change, a lot of teams will change systems generally. They're going to change the system, they're going to play 5 at the back or play 4-5-1. They're going to make sure that the spaces are compressed. So it's in the onus is on United to improve in this area. It's on United to improve on this area. And I'm going to end in this video, guys, speaking about, which envelops the whole thing. What type of team are United? What type of team are they? Because I can't say that it's not enough to just say United are a counter-attacking team. What is their identity when they have the ball? And that's the biggest thing. What is the identity of the ball? Yes, it's good to have the ball, but what are things that you can be able to hold on? Like you, and that's the question that United have to ask themselves. When we have the ball, what are we trying to do with the ball? Which areas are we trying to attack? We can't only solely be a one-trick pony in the fact that we're going to trade when things are not going down well. We're just going to play the ball in behind. We're going to play on the counter-attack. Because if United had sit back, probably if United had sat back and decided to play on the low block, as much as it would have, they would have probably created more chances if they had done that. But the onus is on them to improve, because a lot of their games, especially away from home, and against the bottom of the half teams, they're going to have a lot of their ball. So they need to improve on that area a lot. And that's why I'm looking at Carrick, I'm looking at the coaching staff, and I'm also looking at the players, understanding that there has to be more sharpness. You know, you can't depend on individual brilliance. It's the thing that Mark Gopage also likes to say, which I concur with, is the fact that you can't depend on moments and on the players creating moments of brilliance to win you games all the time. You also need to have a clear passing pattern. You need to have a clear framework and a game model, especially when you play against these types of teams. And something transparent that me as a fan or you as a Manchester United can be like, I know when we're getting to this area what we're trying to do. And no matter, even if the team is trying to stop that, because of our quality and the fact that we have created 4 or 5 different passing patterns, 4 or 5 different ways of doing things, or 4 or 5 different passing patterns and movements and creative ways of playing, the team doesn't know what to do. And even if they understand that, okay, United, because of the quality at the end of the day, it won't matter and Man United win those games 3 or 4, 5-0. So those are the things that I'm looking forward to say. What type of team are we when we play against low blocks? And what is our identity and our game model when we play against those types of teams? Because we have to find it. You know, we can't constantly just be a counter-attacking team. We have to improve and find a way to be able to play against those teams. It's not going to help you if you are playing 34 crosses and you don't have a focal point. That's the thing that tells you that how are Manchester United putting 34 crosses into the box even though they don't have a focal point or a focal point to play that passing to or to play that cross to. And again, when they're playing those crosses are coming from a standard position where they're playing the crosses when the players are standing, when the opposition team like her already has the defensive phases, the defensive phase attack, organized enough. And because they did that, it makes it very easy for opposition teams to play again, to do that. You need to make sure that you play the ball. One of the biggest things that made United, even though United were Manchester United were not one-dimensional. The biggest thing that made United very hard team to play against, even though they were playing crosses, they did everything at speed. They did everything at a high pace. They would play the ball, Carrick or Scholes would play that ball in behind the midfield line, and there would be a half turn maybe from Rooney or Scholes or Giggs. And the moment that ball, they would play 3 or 4 passes, then they switch the ball out wide. And then you'd find Gary Neville or Raphael making that run. And what it did was that it would turn the opposition defense to face their goal. And that's when you would see the Nani or the Score or the Nani or the Valencia putting in crosses. And that's where you saw, because they had runners who would be running into the box. The Giggs, the Scores, the Berbatovs, they'd score a lot of goals because everything was being done at pace, you know, and everything was being done at a high speed. That's why if you're crossing the ball, do that. You can't cross the ball when you've made the ball, move the ball so slowly, you're not making runs, and then you just play inside the box. It just shows you that you don't have any play or any identity or any predetermined stylistic patterns of play that is making you do that, you know. So that is something that United have to work on. Otherwise, we'll be having this issue again and again, guys. Teams that sit back and sit on the low block, compress space for Manchester United will always be a challenge, especially away from home. And that's where United need to improve and work on this area of the game. So I just wanted to give you guys a tactical analysis of that and my thoughts on this. Again, guys, leave a comment, guys. Let's engage. Let's talk about this. I want you guys to engage. The people who have subscribed, I appreciate it. I appreciate the support that you're giving me. And more is going to come. So I hope you guys enjoy the evening. More is going to come. Until I tell you, see you next time, guys. Sharp, sharp.